Welcome to Luvbites. Luvbites. By Dr. Tara, your destination for sexual wellness and mindful relationship advice. Hope you're having an orgasmic day.
Want to stay harder longer? Developed by experts, Eddy by Giddy is a wearable device designed to help men treat erectile dysfunction. Eddy gently grips around the base of the penis and optimizes blood flow, keeping you harder longer. Keep it up so you can nut. And get Eddy today by clicking the link in this episode description or by going to eddybygiddy.com. That's EDDIE by Giddy.com. Listeners of Luvbites can also save $25 on Eddy by using promo code LUVBITS25. That's Luvbites25. Here's a stereotype of long-term relationships. Passion fades, you lose attraction for one another, and sex becomes a chore. But that doesn't have to be you. You can write your own story. Hello, my loves. It's Dr. Tara, your favorite sex and relationship expert here at Luvbites, the podcast for sexual wellness and exploration. I am so excited about our guest today. I actually saw her quite a few years ago on Goop, and then on Will Smith's Instagram, and then on Red Table Talk. So I'm super excited to welcome Michaela Boehm. Michaela is an internationally known expert in intimacy and relationships. Born and raised in Austria, Michaela combines her training in psychology and extensive clinical counseling experience with her in-depth training in the yogic arts. Her unique body of work centers on the intersection of intimacy and embodiment. Known for her work with high-performing individuals, her ongoing private clients include Oscar-winning actors, Grammy-winning musicians, producers, and business pioneers. Michaela is the author of The Wild Woman's Way and the founder of the Nonlinear Movement Method, a powerful somatic release modality. Her work has recently been featured in Gwyneth Paltrow's Netflix show Sex, Love, and Goop and Will Smith's best-selling memoir, Will. Hi, Michaela.
Hello.
So excited to have you here. You have quite a long CV. I feel like I gotta stop and drink water. How long has it been in this industry?
I've been actively teaching, counseling, working with people for 26 years. Before that, of course, I had schooling and practice and all kinds of things. So it's been a long time, longer than I care to admit at this point.
That's so inspiring. 26 years straight of working in this industry. And you must have seen so many people, so many couples, so many situations.
Yeah, I've done by now probably 35,000 one-on-one client hours. So I have some mileage there on my couch.
Talking about experience.
There's nothing quite like actually being in the trenches with whatever comes up in people's relationships. And of course, now I mostly teach all over the world. And that is kind of a very amazing thing to have, to see what's happening in people's relationships and bodies and in the world.
Is it safe to say there is no normal?
No, there's definitely no normal. Relationally, sexually, socially. This is not true everywhere in the world, of course, but more and more we have more options, and that makes it so that normal, or what we considered normal, was never normal. But now there's also other more available options to look at and be.
What I have learned from interviewing Sexpert every week is that every single person has their own fundamental beliefs and philosophy. What's your fundamental philosophy and method when it comes to sex and relationship therapy and helping people?
Well, I kind of combine a whole bunch of different backgrounds. I don't have one fundamental philosophy in the sense that I don't have one tool. I have many, many, many tools. My work centers on where embodiment, meaning being in the body and using the body's genius and ability with the heart that comes with wanting to be connected in relationship and sex, and the education that's needed so you can do that. Because often it's skill that's missing. It's not willingness, but it's skill that's missing. And skill often, particularly when it comes to sex and relationship, has to start in the body. You can't think your way into good sex. You can't talk your way into good sex. Many people have tried and failed.
Yeah.
So really, I would say my philosophy is bringing the body the heart and the mind into alignment, so sustainable and holistic growth and change and connection can be made.
Sounds simple, but is it hard?
No, it's actually very simple. It's so simple that most people think it can't be that simple.
They complicate things.
Yes. When you think things through or when you try and solve things in your mind, you're falling prey to your imprints, relational imprints, societal imprints, knowledge imprints, while the body tends to be very straightforward. It's a yes or it's a no. It's arousal, it's non-arousal. Looking at somebody, not looking at somebody. It's not that you don't have to learn new habits and skills. They're just habits and skills. They're not that complicated. One of the things that people tend to forget with all the complication that is modern life is that sex and relationship is one of the fundamental drivers of human evolution. Always has been, always will. And our endocrine system and our nervous system is built for sex and relationship, built for community. It's built for pleasure and aliveness and also sensory aliveness, because that's how we used to survive, right? Sensual pleasure, which can be equated sensory awareness and aliveness, is what allowed us to develop as humans. And if you don't taste things, you could die of poison. So by bringing the body back into the equation, we are actually affording ourselves the wisdom of millions of years.
The body is intelligent, and learning how to listen to it, how to tune in, and how to trust it is the process of having that long-term sexual wellness aspect in your life.
Yes.
And that's what you teach and counsel most people to help them tune in.
Yeah, that's the first step, to sensitize to the messages of the body and to be able to listen to what the body says. And then the next step, of course, is to acquire the kind of skills you need to get to where you want to go.
Right.
Some people think, oh, well, you get together, you have a great honeymoon period, then it gets boring, and sex becomes a chore, if at all. And that doesn't have to be the case, but it will be the case if you don't understand the principles behind it. So you bring the body into the equation, you learn whatever skills you need to learn, and then you apply it, right, in your relationship. So it's both. It's understanding. It's also wanting to, meaning having the desire to connect, and then having the skill in the body to do so.
There is a primary belief or stereotype for long-term relationships and marriages that after a certain number of years, you just don't have the passion or sex drive or attraction for one another. So sex dies and it becomes the last thing that the couple thinks about. Children comes first, then finances, then household stuff. I know that there is this primary narrative because of my observations, reading research, watching movies, based on your experience, and you have so much experience. How long can a couple go without having sex? 5 years? I mean, that sounds super long. I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm getting married next week.
Yeah. Oh, you are?
Yes.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
And I'm fully committed to not be a couple like that. What have you observed?
Got to bring it back to your first question. What is normal? Well, there is no such thing as normal in the context of it depends on the relationship and it depends on what people want. The most important thing is to have a basic understanding of the purpose of the relationship. And that creates the normal within that purpose. Meaning, if you say, like you said very specifically, I am committed to my relationship not following that trajectory. That's one purpose of your relationship. It's probably not the only purpose of your relationship, but that's one purpose, right? So you want to keep it exciting, sexually alive, intimate, connected. Then ideally, your future husband has that same purpose. You work together on aligning towards that purpose. That would be a good first start. But for some people, that is not the purpose of their relationship. For some people, the purpose of the relationship is having children and raising children, or is having a business together and making money and traveling the world, or things like that. Relationship purpose can change and should change, but it's important to understand that what you align to will make other things fall away. If your main purpose of relationship is to have as many kids as you can, and let's say involved in charitable activities within the context of your community, then sex isn't where you put your attention. Wherever you don't put attention, it will go the natural trajectory of waning passion. I'll tell you why passion wanes in a moment. For instance, if you have 3 or 4 children in a row, let's say somebody has a child every year, some people do that, then probably not going to have a lot of sex. For all the right reasons, your body will need some recovery postpartum. You might be tired from having a few young children, and so on and so on. You can't complain about that in the context of the demand 3 babies place on you.
Right.
Different people have different ideas. It would be quite insane pressure for a woman who has a 2-week-old and a 12-month-old to assume she's going to have the sex life that she had when she first met a man. It's not to say you can't invigorate it, but you have to make sure that societal pressure or what's normal doesn't interfere with what's actually happening. If you do want to make time for sex and that erotic play and the passion and the connection and the intimacy, you have to understand that there's opposing forces at work. This is the thing that people don't want to hear.
Tell us, Michaela, what is it that people don't want to hear?
People don't want to hear that maintaining passion requires work.
But it should be natural.
It should be natural. It is natural when you start. There's a reason why it's natural when you start. And that's, by the way, the key to keeping it alive and coming back to it if you've lost it. You meet someone and you don't know them, and it's super exciting. You feel connected to them or attracted to them in some way. Hopefully you also have sexual chemistry. Not everybody goes for that, but a lot of people do. Yeah. And so you have this amazing period where you talk a lot and you have a lot of sex. You get to know each other. It's all fresh. It's all new. You don't know each other. Everything feels kind of awkward, but yet so exciting. And you have this moment of coming together. That's a combo of 2 things. One is just hormonal cocktails. First attraction, oxytocin, high amount of dopamine, all of those kind of things that happen in the body naturally. And then they get, of course, amplified by actually having sex. The other one is that when you don't know somebody, the principle of what I call erotic friction, that principle is one that opposites attract. What makes for a good relationship is birds of a feather stick together. What makes for good sex is opposites attract.
Oh.
Yes, exactly. So what happens is you don't know somebody, so they're by definition opposite of you. You have a large pole. Sometimes people call that polarity. 2 people who don't know each other are far apart, and there's this arc of the opposites. Opposites attract. Then as you talk more, you talk all night, you're like you can't wait to know each other. You come closer, and then you start building a life together. You have common interests. Then you do things together. You go on a vacation. Now you have friends together. Now you move in together, and eventually you end up on a sofa next to each other in your matching sweatpants, eating out of one bowl of popcorn, watching Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Right? And it's super exciting, but the sex has somewhat fizzled. Well, why is that? Because you've gotten closer and closer and closer, meaning you become more of the same. Sameness and resonance makes for good relationship. It's super important. You can't have a good relationship if you don't have common ground. But the closer you're together, the less of that arc of attraction is. So that's the bad news. That's why people have less sex, because the hormones go down, as we know, oxytocin, all of that starts waning after a while because of the proximity, but also bodies get used to each other. You know that from when you've kissed somebody first, it's like this crazy sensation. And then 2 years later, you kiss and it's not. What is that? Well, it's actually resonance. It's being used to somebody. The thing that's very important is that you have enough sameness so that the large part of your life that is dependent on that is serviced well.
Okay.
Meaning common goals, aligned purpose, common ideas about money, religion, politics, food intake, the way you raise your children, where you go on vacation, the more of that you have aligned, the better your chance for long-term success. That's more important than sex, believe it or not. But sex, of course, when it's not there, becomes very important. But the good news is you can always artificially create distance.
Ooh, artificially creating distance.
It's so simple. People don't do it, but people have such bad habits around doing this. Hard to convince people because they fall back into the pattern. In my book, I call this date night discipline. People hate that sometimes because they don't want to go on date nights and they don't want to have discipline. But what I mean with date night discipline is for large parts of your day, it's good to co-parent. Good to run a business together, good to have common values. But when it comes to the sexual excitement, it's just not going to be there.
Right.
What people have to do is when they want to be sexy, as in having sex, but also wanting to play with your partner, you have to observe the things that first worked. Number one, spend some time apart.
Ooh, that's controversial.
Yes, it's very controversial. I once got 6 months of crazy newspaper coverage for saying that in the context of somebody's relationship who was very public. It is controversial. And people don't want to do it, but it's so simple. That is why when one partner of a couple goes on a business trip, when they come back, it's exciting again. That is why in the olden days, people would have ladies' night with the Tupperware, weird shits that we now look at like, oh, but it's not weird. Being with your friends away from your partner is extremely important. Having separate interests, extremely important. What are you going to talk about if all you can talk about is the dog, the kids, the bills, the business, your horrible boss who didn't take the trash out? That's a sex killer.
Yeah.
For anyone, spend some time apart. Be in separate rooms, do separate things, have separate activities, come back and be interesting again.
Yeah.
Right? Remember the things you used to do on a date. Those are the things that recreate sexual desire. Have some things to talk about that are not what I call administrivia, meaning all the crazy, trivial admin stuff that you talk about. And that's why I'm calling it date night discipline. Try have a date with your significant other and don't talk about anything that has to do with your regular life.
Y'all heard it here. Date night discipline.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Do you talk about that in the Wild Woman's Way?
I do. In the Wild Woman's Way, there's a whole chapter on relationship. I wrote the book as somewhat of a manual for women in the 21st century, all the different bits and pieces that make it so you can have your sexual attraction, your erotic friction back. And like I said, it doesn't take much. I've worked with this for many, many years. I've honed it down to things that people can do at home at no cost with very little time engagement because most people are very, very busy.
My Luvbites fam, definitely check that out. I will have the link in the show notes for today's episode. What is the number one myth of relationships that you've seen in the last 26 years that's very salient?
There's two things. There's sexual myth and then there's relational myth, right? On the sexual front, one of the big myths is that no, it's not natural to have amazing sex. Yes, everybody can have sex because we are built for sex for procreation, but that's not the same as having sexual facility, capacity, and skill. And what is, I think, the biggest myth is that somehow we should just have all these amazing orgasms.
Right.
And our partner should be able to give them to us, and we should know exactly how to give it to our partners the way they like it. That's an incredibly harmful myth. Most of us learned about sex at a time where either it was solo, if we were lucky, it was solo. If we were unlucky, we had some horrible transgressions. Or if we're like most people, you fumble in the dark, so to speak, literally and figuratively. And a lot of people have never upgraded their sexual skills beyond their first one or two partners.
Right.
Even if they're promiscuous, somehow it's supposedly just going to get better without skill development. Well, that's a little bit like saying, well, you learned how to walk, so you should be a world-class marathon runner. No, you have to train for world-class sexual receptivity as well as giving. Learning about your body is number one to counteract that myth, learning what turns you on, but also learning how your body works. Practicing ability for or capacity for pleasure, capacity for different sensitivity in the body, and then also practicing some skills, up-leveling your sexual skills towards your partner in general, and then towards your chosen partner. That would do away with a lot of the myth of good sex should just fall from the sky, so to speak.
Right. I like using metaphor. Everybody can cook. Like ultimately, if you have to, everybody can cook, but not everyone's a Michelin star chef.
That's right. And once again, some people don't want to be Michelin star
Right.
chefs.
Yeah.
Good, solid home cooking
Yes.
also requires skill, right?
Exactly. So when you talk about training, let's say my listeners, let's say they are married couple, 5 years, they live in Washington suburb, and they've been together 8 years. They've been married 5 years. They have kids. How can they train and become better at their sexual skills?
Let's just assume they want to have sex and they're willing to recreate a bit of that intimacy and erotic play, which we talked about how to do. Now we're looking at actual sexual skill acquisition. That is easier nowadays than it's ever been. Loads of literature, books, videos, instructional porn type, but instructional stuff. There's every kind of tool, toy. We have everything nowadays. So we're actually in a much better position to have real good sexual skill than we ever have been, because a lot of the taboo has been lowered enough that it's available when you want to find it. Why people don't do it is that they equate learning new skills with being deficient.
Like,
right?
oh, I'm already good.
Yeah, I'm already good, or there's something wrong with me that my partner wants me to learn something else.
Right. They get
Right?
defensive.
They get defensive, or they get very sad because their sex life has kind of waned.
Right.
They're like, well, I guess I'm not like that porn star that he watches. And all of those kind of horrible things that affect
Right.
our self-esteem. It's the same for men. As you well know, erections are a very fickle thing. Men are not nearly as insensitive as they're portrayed. They need to feel confident and they need to feel cared for and supported as well and praised for their abilities. Often when people go at learning new skills, it gets conflated with there's something wrong here. My tip to anybody I work with and anybody who listens is see it as an adventure you're going on together.
Yes.
Always want to phrase it as in, ooh, what else could we do? Like going on a trip. Some people like going to the same hotel in the same place every year because that's what they like. But most of us want to see new things when we go on a trip. So when you say to your soon-to-be husband, let's go to Bali,
Right.
he isn't going to go, what's wrong with Italy? Is there something wrong with my choice of Italy last year? Did I do something wrong? No, you go, oh yeah, new adventure. Let's go somewhere else. And that's how you have to look at your sexual exploration and skill. You go, what else? What else can we visit? What else can we see? What don't we know yet? You're going into the guided trip into other realms, other lands. You take a flight to somewhere else and you do it together. Let's just say you go, well, I've never been one for blowjobs. I've never been with a guy who enjoyed blowjobs, if that's possible, but let's just say, but I want to learn that. And then that's not, oh, I suck at blowjobs, pun intended here. But can you tell me what you like? Can I learn some techniques? And then maybe the next time the woman says, I want to explore X. I've never been tied up. Well, how does that look? Then maybe you find out that you actually don't like that, or you find out you like that a lot. Or you find out you like it, but your partner doesn't. And then that's an exploration instead of a combat.
Even in travel, you can go to a country and then come back home and go, I wouldn't go there again. Or you go somewhere and you're like, whoa, that place was awesome. I want to continue to go there every other year, whatever. So it's the same thing. Wow, I got goosebumps because I feel like what you just shared, it's so simple, but it's very, very powerful. It's a small shift of perspective because so many people feel learning something means they were deficient. They were not good enough. And that's like the first step is dropping that ego. And it's not about that. It's not just about you. It's about us and it's about adventure. Framing it in a way that's adventurous and explorative, it's so much more fun.
And it's also much more sustainable. I mean, we're talking about an issue that's for many people fraught with a lot of pain and misinformation because, of course, we don't learn about sex and relationship when we are younger. We come to it at an age where it's essentially late in the game, and rightly so, because it's not appropriate in young years. But you learn math from when you are 5 years on or even before that. But you don't learn relationship till you're supposed to have one. And so you're coming with a deficit of knowledge in the body and in the mind, except for the innate knowledge of the body. But that means you will have to up level. And if you see that as the purpose of the relationship, then it's not this horrible thing. You go and you learn it and then you hone it. And then it's this exciting game of honing your skills together into something that aligns with the purpose of your relationship. That's the sexual myth. The relational myth.
Ooh, yeah.
A bit of a downer, but not really.
Tell us the relational myth.
Relational myth is not everybody's meant to stay together.
Tell us more.
In that, of course, also sits the secret for longevity. The secret for longevity sits in the fact that you make a choice freshly all the time, instead of just assuming it's going to go on and on and on, and you have to keep it going regardless of what happens. There's a case to be made that some relationships have an expiration date because one or two people grow beyond what the other partner wants or is capable of. It can be as simple as you get together in your 20s, you're digital nomads traveling the world. Right. It's all super cool. You're having great adventures. And then one of the partners says, I want children. And the other one goes, no, I want to go into the Himalayas next for 6 months. That's what they call irreconcilable differences. That doesn't mean the relationship was bad or the people don't love each other. It just means that there's no more alignment in relationship. And if you can't create alignment in relationship, sticking around beyond the point of alignment is actually cheating both partners out of getting what they want in their life. This is also true with sexual orientation, financial orientation, things like that. By not assuming it's going on forever and ever and ever just on autopilot, and by also knowing that sometimes it's better to actually stop a relationship, automatically the relationship gets better because there's more space for that excitement. There's more space for individual development. There's more space for actually talking things out instead of building long-time resentment. There's more space for perhaps finding alternative models of relationship, which are now available to all of us.
Becoming more common.
And why not, right? This is where we come back to the very beginning of your question, which is there is no normal. By saying we don't have to do this, but we want to, maybe our relationship will transition into, let's say, co-parenting only, or maybe it is for a limited amount of time. We're going to give it our very all. Other models and other ways of relating can be fleshed out that are much more true to both people.
So the myth is that you should be together forever.
Yes, and that you must preserve the relationship at all cost.
But not everyone should.
No, sometimes a divorce is the kindest thing you can do for yourself, your partner, and your children. I'm not saying that lightly, because I think when you have children, you always want to give it your very, very best attempt. But sometimes everybody's better off when the misery stops. And sometimes when the attempt to keep it together stops, the relationship can actually get better. I've seen that too. I've seen people get divorced and then continue being together in a totally wonderful, amazing way.
Last night, I was talking to two other women about this, and one of them was telling me that they want to embody more of dark femininity, that sensuality, because she feels like she's very girl next door, goofy, and she wants to hone that part of herself more. And since your book is called Wild Woman's Way, plus so much of your work is embodiment, and I feel like it's about embodiment. Why is someone more erotic than others? And how can both become more like sexually confident and exude that type of energy?
This is a great question. I'm very passionate about that. I actually have an entire year-long course on just that because it's so common. So I'll try and explain some of the principles here quickly. When you think of flavors, what are you thinking of? Well, you think of things like spices or so for cooking. We all have flavors that are native to us. And some of those flavors come with how we look. For instance, it's considered that brunette or dark-haired women are spicier than blondes. Certain kind of skin types feel more cool, while other skin types feel more hot in their temperature. And temperature, of course, translates into sexual temperature as well. Some women consider themselves these cooling, soothing kind of personalities. Girl next door is very nurturing, enjoyable, light, pleasant. Girl next door is a super important flavor. But of course, if all you do is girl next door, that's like having pizza every night.
We can exhibit all of
Of
those.
course. We are all the flavors.
Okay.
Both men and women are all the flavors available. But we have what I call a home flavor. Within our home flavor, we have a certain kind of a temperature range from very light to very dark,
Okay.
right? And dark being the more sensual, sexual, dangerous, deviant, and very light being the more angelic, innocent, virginal. And then in between there's a whole range that goes from very, very light to very dark. And we are somewhere on that spectrum. And then we have flavors that are our related flavors. So it's a little bit like you like Greek food, you like Italian food. You don't like crazy, spicy Kashmiri food. But your partner ever so often is going to want a bit of crazy, spicy Kashmiri food. What we can do, and we can do that through the body very easily, because once again, our body has it, is we learn how to be different spices. We learn how to be different flavors. That's very easily done when you know what you're doing. And just embodiment, it can be trained. How you train it, for instance, people do this instinctively. Sometimes see people do dress up. Or live action role play things. That's the more artificial attempts of embodying different flavors. And so typically our partners, our sexual partners, love our native flavor. That's why they were attracted to us. But like I said, pizza every night gets old, even if it's the best pizza on earth. Yes. So it's nice to be able to do a bit of curry and a bit of Italian food and a little bit of crazy, spicy stuff. Right? Even if it's just as a palate cleanser. When we learn those kind of expressions, that also is one of the ways to really spice up your erotic life.
And it's embodiment.
It's easy to do. I'm going to give you one way to do it. Pick some flavor that is very opposite of yours. I'm thinking of a flavor opposite of yours. So who is very opposite of you?
Someone that's opposite of who I am.
Yes.
Probably someone that's really shy. Last night, I was talking to my friend and I said Scarlett Johansson.
Perfect. Loads of videos out there of Scarlett Johansson. There's a great movie that has a lot of what we're talking about that I used to use a lot. Vicky Cristina Barcelona, that Woody Allen movie.
Ooh, okay.
It has Scarlett Johansson and it has Penelope Cruz, who are the opposite ends. And so in that movie, Javier Bardem is with both of them, which is kind of perfect because they're so opposite. So you have Scarlett Johansson in that movie is the cool, blonde, soothing, relaxed character. And then you have Penelope Cruz, who's mental, spicy, loud, passionate, right? What you can do, you can watch Vicky Cristina Barcelona and YouTube, all these clips.
I gotta watch it.
Yeah, you should watch it. And then what you can do is you can feel that person and you can feel the way, the temperature, the texture, the way they move, the way your body feels when you feel them. And try that on. And then you can do the other person and feel what that feels like. And then you just practiced a bit of that flavor on occasion. Your friend is a lot more Scarlett Johansson, you're a lot more Penelope Cruz. So you go to lunch and you do Scarlett Johansson, she does Penelope Cruz.
Oh my gosh, so fun.
Yeah, once again, this is not rocket science. It just requires a bit of play and knowledge and willingness to explore.
I love that you have so much fundamental knowledge that people don't think about. It all sounds new, but at the same time, something you already know, but no one tells you again, so you forgot about it.
Right. My game, my internal game in the work I do is to essentially take all the big principles and boil them down so that they can actually be done.
Yes.
Only the things you do will change your behavior.
Right. You got to take action.
Yeah.
I love that. And I don't want this conversation to end, but the last part of my show is called 10 Quickies with Dr. Tara, where I give you a word And you just give me a response back. It can be one word, it can be one sentence or a couple of sentences about that word.
But brevity is of the essence.
Yes. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, let's go. Number 1, threesomes.
Dangerous, I would say. Dangerous in the sense that that only works in new relationships. And it only works when 3 people don't know each other well. If 2 people know each other well and bring a third along, it typically doesn't seem to work that well.
Ooh, controversial.
Yes.
Number 2, porn.
Same there, dangerous, meaning in the best possible scenario, it could be informative. In the worst possible scenario, it's a killer for somebody's regular sex life.
Next up, nudists.
Ah, yes.
Are you a nudist?
No, I'm not a nudist, but I'm European, where there's a lot less drama around being naked in non-sexual situations, meaning people bathe naked in the lake. And there's something good about that when our form and our body isn't just relegated to sex, and also when we can feel that our bodies have a value regardless of their sexual value, and that naked bodies are healthy and wonderful just because we're alive. And I think that's what's good about nudists.
Oh, I love that. I love being naked. So I love that you said that and about the value. That's so beautiful. Number 4, pegging.
Ooh.
It's a spicy list.
Yes, that's a great list. Definitely worth exploring, I'd say.
Nice. Number 5, open marriage.
Also worth exploring, but I would say that that requires a lot of maturity, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of support.
Yes. Number 6, love at first sight.
I'd say always that's possible, but often it's lust at first sight that then develops into something. Lust at first sight, definitely. Love at first sight, yes, can happen, but hormones play a big role.
Yeah. 7, low sex drive.
Yeah, very common. Not a problem if both people in the relationship have it and are okay with it. Definitely a problem if it's based on stress, trauma, or relationship trouble. So it needs to be attended if it's an issue.
Number 8, passion.
Yes. I'd say passion should go way beyond the sexual realm and should be a lust for life and an engagement with all things sensual and sexual and life.
Yes, last for life. I love that. Number 9, aftercare.
That's an interesting word, I think, and very important in the context of the intimacy within a relationship. And it's not just sex, it's connection, and the heart is involved. And a certain amount of intimacy post-sex, I think, really, really fosters good relationship.
Number 10, this is spicy. Are you ready?
Yes.
Cuckolding.
I don't know if it's so much spicy as it's unproductive, I'd say. And what I mean by that, this is not a 3-sentence answer because it's very nuanced.
Feel free to share.
Some people, that is their thing. If that's their thing, and that gives them the impetus for having an exciting relationship, no problem at all. But from a biological viewpoint, there's things that happen in the body when you see your partner having sex with another partner that are not always healthy from an endocrine system as well as a long-term health effect and also dominance. There's all kinds of things in there that I think I would caution to just go for things as a means of spicing up one's sex life without knowing a bit more about the consequences of such things. It's very important to understand that in most cases, it has an effect on the relationship and on the person's personal well-being.
So educate yourself first.
Yes.
Don't do things haphazardly.
Yes. In general, that's true when it comes to involving other people in your sex life. You do want to know what's potentially happening, both relationally as well as from an endocrine standpoint.
Wow. So before you leave us, this has been an enlightening experience for me. There were so many things that I feel now I have a better language to speak about from what you've taught us. Before you go, what's the one advice that you think people should always take into account when it comes to their own sexual wellness and relationship happiness?
See it as an adventure. And then the other thing that I would always want to point towards is that the most important factor of long-term relational happiness is actually generosity. And not generosity as in expensive gifts, but generosity of the heart and the assumption that your partner does the best they can. And then they're going the extra mile to do something for your partner, not in a martyr way, but from a generous place. And there's a middle ground that is mutual generosity of heart and spirit.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, my Luvbites fam, I bet you learned a lot. So definitely take a listen of this episode a couple of times to really absorb Michaela's messages and teachings. I know you'd like to know more about her, so I'll have her website and all the other links on today's show notes. There is this book, The Wild Woman's Way. It should be a mandatory reading. Men can benefit a lot too.
A lot of my male clients refer to that book regularly because it talks also about orgasms and all kinds of things as kind of a manual to their women.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things in the book apply to men as well. The reason it's called The Wild Woman's Way is because of what we just talked about, the flavors and the archetypal explorations that are native to us in the sexual domain.
I learned about it on Will Smith's Instagram story. And he likes that book. So I'm sure men can benefit a lot. And of course, check out Michaela's course as well. And you can watch her interview on that Red Table Talk interview. There's some really deep stuff on that episode. Also, Goop Show. Thank you so much, Michaela.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, my Luvbites fam. Have an orgasmic day. I'm all about being sexual and in the moment. This is why I orgasmically recommend the Pulse Warming System. Pulse dispenses warm lube with just a swipe of your hand so you can get right back to action, which my partner and I really love. So toss that sticky lube bottle and get the Pulse Warming System today. Check out the link and discount code in this episode's description and have an orgasmic play.
Thanks for listening. This was Luvbites. By Dr. Tara. Follow Dr. Tara on social media at luvbites.co. Have an orgasmic day.